the South China Sea trembles once again. A reef barely visible on a map could soon decide the balance of power in Asia. Welcome back to Shadows of Strategy. Today, we turn to Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint that sits just 120 nautical miles from Luzon in the Philippines, and a symbol of both national sovereignty and global rivalry. In recent days, China has announced that it intends to transform Scarborough into a so-called marine nature reserve. At first glance, this might sound like a step toward protecting the environment. But in Manila, few are convinced. Philippine officials see this move for what it could truly be: the first step toward turning Scarborough Shoal into another militarized fortress right on the Philippines' doorstep. And the warning has already been issued. If Beijing takes that path, Manila will resist. Scarborough Shoal is not just another reef. It is a strategic jewel in the South China Sea, sitting in the middle of major shipping lanes and within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. For decades, Filipino fishermen have relied on these waters to make their living. But since 2012, when Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels took control after a standoff, Manila's access has been squeezed. The Hague Tribunal of 2016 made it clear. Beijing's sweeping claims have no basis in international law. Yet China ignored that ruling, cementing its presence with patrols, barriers, and harassment of local fishermen. For Filipinos, Scarborough is more than a rock formation. It is a symbol of national pride and an urgent security concern. For China, it is a potential forward base that would extend its surveillance and power projection deep into Philippine territory. The phrase nature reserve may sound innocent, but history has shown how China operates. When Beijing claims to be building research stations, runways appear. When it speaks of environmental projects, radar systems, and missile launchers follow. In the Paracels and Spratlys, reefs once dismissed as minor were transformed into hardened outposts bristling with weapons. Scarborough could be next. By disguising militarization under the banner of conservation, China is attempting to normalize its presence and justify construction that international law does not permit. Manila sees through the ruse, and officials are sounding the alarm. Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro has made it clear: any attempt to militarize Scarborough Shoal will be met with firm opposition. The armed forces of the Philippines are now closely watching Chinese activity in the area, prepared for what might follow. And Manila is not keeping these concerns behind closed doors. Through its transparency initiative, the government is exposing Chinese actions by releasing videos, photos, and satellite images. Each revelation chips away at Beijing's narrative and builds international support for the Philippine cause. The stakes could not be higher. If Scarborough Shoal were to be militarized, the implications would reach far beyond Filipino fishermen. A Chinese base there would grant Beijing a surveillance outpost within range of Luzon, Clark Air Base, and Subic Bay, all critical sites for Philippine defense and U.S. forward operations. It would give China an extended line of sight across the Pacific approaches, positioning it to monitor shipping, naval deployments, and even air traffic in one of the most contested maritime regions on Earth. Combined with its presence in the Spratlys and Paracels, Scarborough could complete a strategic triangle that locks in Chinese influence across the first island chain. For Taiwan, this would mean increased encirclement. For the Philippines, it would mean a constant threat looming just beyond the horizon. For the United States and its allies, it would be a direct challenge to freedom of navigation and regional stability. That is why the Philippines is not standing alone. Under the Mutual Defense Treaty, an armed attack on Philippine forces anywhere in the South China Sea could draw in U.S. military support. Washington has already reaffirmed this commitment multiple times, leaving no doubt about where it stands. American warships have been conducting patrols alongside Philippine vessels, demonstrating both presence and resolve. Australia, too, has increased its engagement, joining joint patrols and signaling that its role in the Indo-Pacific will not be limited to the South Pacific. Japan has stepped up by providing coastal radars, surveillance aircraft, and maritime security assistance, expanding the reach of Philippine defenses. Even European powers, such as France and the UK, have begun sending ships into the region, reinforcing the principle of freedom of navigation. This growing network of cooperation sends a clear message to Beijing. Scarborough Shoal will not be another unchallenged expansion. Any attempt to militarize the area will provoke not only Manila, but a coalition of nations determined to preserve international law. And that coalition is becoming stronger by the day. The road ahead is fraught with uncertainty. China may choose to escalate gradually, sending survey vessels, erecting floating barriers, or anchoring so-called research platforms. Each step would test Philippine resolve and the response of its allies. Manila, for its part, will continue to expose and counter these moves, hoping that international pressure can deter further construction. But the risk of confrontation is real. A clash of ships, a collision, or an attempt to block Philippine resupply missions could spark a wider crisis. In this struggle, the question is not just about one shoal. It is about whether smaller nations can resist the might of a larger power, and whether alliances can hold firm in the face of creeping expansion. Scarborough Shoal could become the place where Beijing finally meets resistance that it cannot simply brush aside. If the Philippines, with its allies, remains united and resolute, this reef may mark a turning point. If not, the South China Sea could slip further into Chinese control, with consequences that will reshape Asia for decades. Scarborough Shoal may appear as a mere dot in the ocean, but it is fast becoming the front line in the struggle for sovereignty, law, and balance in the Indo-Pacific. For the Philippines, this is about protecting its waters, its people, and its future. For the United States and its allies, it is about ensuring that the Indo-Pacific remains free and open, rather than dominated by a single power. The coming months will reveal whether China's plan for Scarborough ends in success or resistance, and the choices made now will echo across the region. Thank you for watching Shadows of Strategy. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with others who follow the shifting tides of global power.